Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast, the podcast that gives you immediate actions you can take to start seeing life-shifting results now.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Achieve Results Now podcast. This is Mark Cardone.
And Theron Feidt.
Your to-do list is not, I'm going to say this, is not a badge of honor or success. Having a long to-do list that you can never get through, that you keep adding to, is not an indicator whether you're successful or not successful. It's about working on the right things, and that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, I think we all say this, oh, I'm so busy, I'm this, I'm that. And I think that can definitely be a trap. And it can be a trap that you think that because you're busy and because you're spending a lot of time that you're getting a lot of things done. And when you look back, you're like,
Yeah.
I'm not, especially if you run a business and a small business, you have to be productive or the business dies. Your time is so valuable. Plus also, and you want to spend time doing other things as well. So when you're at work, work. When you're at home, be at home,
Yeah.
And this can help you have a better balance, let's say, and listen, sometimes, especially when you're younger, I think under 30 and certainly and even under 40, 12-hour days.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yep.
That's you and I do it, and sometimes we still do it. Like usually my day is 10 hours, but sometimes it's 12, still to this day. And not that I don't take certain times off, but that's how you get things done.
Yeah. And you know what's interesting to me with this is, I mean, people look at this goes all the way back to Carnegie, right? And how to win friends and influence people, and why do people do things? And it all boils down to that need for significance, right? Like we
Yeah.
want to feel important. And I think, especially growing up, owning a business, being involved in different, groups and activities and things, like we all have that desire to feel important. Where it becomes challenging is when it becomes we need to do things for everybody else
Right.
to get that feeling of
Right.
significance, right? And that's not saying you shouldn't. Like, look, I am a big
Yeah,
fan of volunteering, getting involved, doing
for
things.
sure.
Time generosity is huge. But when the to-do list when you become slave to the list,
Hmm.
right? And you're sitting there going, geez, I just don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to spend with my kids. I don't
Hmm.
have time to start that business I want to start, or even, talk to people about it. That's when it's like your time is not working for you anymore.
Right.
The world will go on when you go away, right? If you leave
Hmm.
for 2 weeks, it's unless you have somebody at home that needs feeding,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and you can set that up so someone else does it.
Yeah.
But short of tasks that are like vital in life, life
Right.
important that need delegating, really you can go away for 2 weeks, and when you get back, I guarantee you your life is going to be pretty well right where you left it.
Right. Yep.
So I think this podcast is really good for people who feel busy, people who want to achieve, and people who want to like pare that list down to the important things.
Yeah, and if you do have something home that needs to be fed, get a cat. You can leave easily for a week, you know. Cat won't even know you're gone.
Oh, I thought you were going to say the cat will eat the people that didn't that
Oh no,
you,
if the people die, yes.
yeah, the cat will eat them.
The cat will definitely eat them. But no, I'm talking about if you go away. That's for sure. The cats are ruthless for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
okay, so
anyways.
yeah, no. Anyways, yeah, cats. Get a cat. That's step number one. Now, step number one. So step number one, we're talking about the 80-20 rule,
Yeah.
right? And that 80-20 rule defined for people is really that 80% of our results, and especially the results that matter, come from 20% of our activity, right? Pareto's principle.
Yeah.
And it is proven across all things, right? The hard thing with the 80-20 rule that I've always run into is knowing which 20% of activities
Yeah.
actually
Hmm.
generate the 80%, right? Because you never know,
Right.
and you can learn through experience, and that's a big
Yeah.
part of this. But really understanding that that 80-20 rule is important.
Yeah, and I look at that as you have to plan your day and then review the plan. How did it
Yeah,
go? By doing that, now you can hone down what these are the important things.
yeah,
we want to make sure that we're thinking about, okay, if I do this, what's the result going to be? And if you've done it before, you start to know. If you've done it for years, you do know what the results will be. And oftentimes, especially with important things, results aren't instantaneous.
Yeah.
It's a building process, so it takes a little time. And if you are aware of that, then you can just be consistent and then get that 20% that needs to be done.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about Stephen Covey a lot during this podcast because he's really like the father of time management, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And I really do think like everybody in the world should be almost forced to use a Franklin Covey planner
yeah,
paper version for a portion of their life because I think there's a
yeah.
lot of value there. But one of the key principles when you open that thing up, people who use a planner know, is big rocks, right? The
Right.
big
Yep.
rocks.
Yep.
It's about not necessarily everything on your to-do list is not equal. You
Right.
know, exercise time should be weighted higher than catching the next thing on Netflix, right?
Right.
They
It-
use the same amount of ink on your to-do list,
Yep.
but that doesn't mean those two tasks are equal.
Right.
And really figuring out which of those tasks you have are the heaviest, are the ones that are the biggest, are the ones that
Hmm.
that you need to take up space first, and making sure those get planned into the
Right.
plan and into the day. Like that's a great first step.
Hmm. And that leads to step two is is really prioritizing. So
Yeah,
the time matrix that was introduced to me back in 1990 by Stephen Covey, How to Win Friends, or The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, rather.
yeah,
It's a deep book, and it was difficult to get through, especially as a young kid. But very, very good. And this is when I was introduced to this, and probably was around before. He probably got it from somebody else, but he's definitely the main one that's influenced us, the two of us, and our system with this. And it's a quadrant. You have urgent and important, and you have not urgent and not important. And that's all based on the quadrant. And when we say we're in quad one, which is urgent and important, you think, okay, well, I want to stay in quad one. I want to stay in quadrant one. That's where I'm going to be the best. But actually, you're not, because that's where you can be burned out.
yeah,
So that's where you're putting out fires. That's where you're um, replying to emails right away and text right away, and you're not really planning your day. The day's planning you, and you're just going, going, going. And you can get a lot done by that, but what direction are you going into?
yeah,
And whose direction are you going into? You're not really in control. And like I said, burnout is very likely if you stay in quad one for very long.
yeah. You become so reactive,
Yeah.
to everything. I mean, you basically think house is on fire, have to put fire out
Right.
immediately, and
Yep.
and that's important and it's urgent, but living there is exhausting.
Yeah.
If you're constantly hopping from foot to foot.
Yep.
I want to skip over to quad four, right? Because
Okay.
you brought that one up, which is,
Yep.
the not urgent, not important stuff.
Yep.
And that's really, kind of the time waster stuff, social media, TV. And listen, just like quad one, there's a place for quad four stuff. We,
Sure.
you know, we need rest time. We need, and we could argue that goes into different quadrants, but
Yeah.
you need to waste a little bit of time, right?
Yeah.
I think we all need that to decompress, whether it's,
Right.
you know, hitting social for a few minutes, but controlling that quad four time is
Right.
equally as important as controlling that quad one time.
Yeah. And then going to quad three. Now, this I think is what can trip people up. I think
Hmm.
quad three, people are often in quad three and really feeling like they're doing the right thing. Because what happens is it's urgent things that need to be done. But the difference between quad three and quad one is quad three, the urgent things are not important.
Hmm.
Okay. You just got a text between our recordings today, and you didn't feel it was urgent to get to it right away,
Right.
right?
Yep.
Otherwise, if you felt it was urgent, we would not be
We
recording
would
this right
we
now.
would pause.
We would pause, right?
Uh,
Um, and so you've learned that, okay, yep, I gotta see that, but it's urgent, but it might be urgent to somebody else.
yeah.
It's like when somebody comes up to you and say, "Do you have a minute?"
Oh,
right? And sometimes you want to be open, you want to be available, yes. But then there's certain people that just monopolize your time, and they really just like hearing themselves talk, and they just want to unload on you.
hmm
And you have to be careful, and you have to guard your time,
yeah,
guard your time wisely, and don't let other people, because other people are in quad one, put you and they're giving you their quad one stuff.
yeah,
Right? So it's urgent, but it's not really urgent to you. It's urgent to them. They just want it done to get it off their plate,
yeah,
and that's not a good thing. So I think quad three, other than quad four, because I think a lot of people waste time and all of that, like you talked about.
yeah.
But I think quad three can really trip people up a lot.
Yeah, because it's really where the busy work falls in.
Yeah,
The
right. Busy
stuff that
work, exactly.
and I would even say a lot of the things that you're saying are important, not you, but people who are listening. Like you're saying these are important,
Yep,
almost as an excuse to not get to the important stuff, right?
exactly.
Like
Yep,
this is it's the easy, fluffy, the cleaning off your desk.
right,
When there's phone calls to make, it's the
right,
researching the people you're calling online when there's phone calls to make.
right.
That busy work can really eat up. I would bet quad three eats up a lot of people's day.
Yeah, yep. Now, where we want to be, and of course, we're not going to be 100% of our time in this, but it's quad two activities. So these are activities that are important but not urgent. And you're thinking, okay, well, if they're not urgent, why am I doing it now? Well, why do you work out? You don't work out because the doctor told you you have a month to live, so now you're going to start working out, and then it doesn't work that way. You're still going to be gone in a month, most likely. You work out because it keeps you in shape. It makes you feel better. It gets you in a better mood. It sets you up for the future. So if something does happen, if you get sick, you're not sick as long because you're already in good shape. If if you have a comorbidity and you go into a surgery, is the doctor going to be very concerned about you? The answer is yes, because
Mhm.
you could die, right? But if you're going in the surgery in good shape, the doctor isn't as worried about you, and that's really quad one, quad two, I mean,
Yeah,
so you want it's preparation time, think of planning, working out, things that are important to do, but you can put them off. And the
yeah,
problem is people do put them off, and then they end up in quad one,
right.
where now it's a crisis,
No,
right?
100. That and
Yeah,
this is where like your health scares come in, right? And not things you didn't plan, but things you could have avoided.
yeah,
They end up in quad one because you didn't take care of them in quad two. This
right,
is also like if you're a business owner, this is where we always talk about working on your business and
right,
not in your business, right? This is
right.
where your strategic thinking, your brainstorming,
Hmm.
listen, you have a meeting coming up tomorrow, preparing for it so that you're not spending an hour, kind of thinking of what to do
Right.
on the fly. You know what I mean? So I think all this is really, planning a vacation, ahead of time and not just kind of showing up and hoping there's a hotel room available.
Right,
Right.
right,
So,
right.
I think a lot of that Q2 time is really valuable.
Yeah, for sure. So I would encourage you guys all to look this up
hmm
and then track your time and figure out how much time am I spending in each of these quadrants in a typical day. And if most of your time isn't spent in quad two, then you need to make some adjustments.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yep. And
Not
then
easy, not easy, but as simple as
not,
that.
oh, man, if you've ever tried tracking your time,
Yeah,
it is exhausting, but it
it
is
can
one of
be.
the coolest things you can do.
Yeah.
Get the quadrant out and just start writing things in there that you did during the day.
And
Um,
real quick, just a quick tip on that. What has always worked for me is 3 hour blocks. I like to think of my day in 3 hour blocks. So 6 to 9, 9 to noon, noon to three, and so on. So that way it's not so overwhelming, and you don't necessarily need to do minute to minute because you would that would consist of you writing, and then what you have is I wrote what I'm doing minute to minute, right?
right.
so so you can be a little bit more not as specific with it. This is what I did in this 3 hour block. Here's the top three things that I did, that type of thing. So
I
you
like
don't have
that.
to be so like minute to
Wrote
minute. That would be
wrote what I
ridiculous.
did a minute ago. Wrote what I
Yeah,
did a minute ago. Like that
right,
that would be
right, right.
exhausting.
Yeah.
So And then step three, I love, right? It's about looking at your work and breaking it into shallow work and deep work, right?
Right.
Shallow work really being what I call multitasking.
Yep.
I mean, what everyone calls multitasking.
Yep. Yep.
It's
Yep.
I'm doing an email and I'm working on a PDF and I got laundry running in the background. I've got,
Yep.
noodles cooking for the kids. Like that's our shallow work. It doesn't
Hmm.
require a lot of that
Right.
the kind of deep thought, strategic brain
Hmm.
power or
Hmm.
anything.
Right. Yeah. And the deep work is you need to be focused. You need, maybe you're thinking creativity, you're working on marketing strategy, or you're coming up with a new business plan, or whatever the case is. Now, with this, it's all about your timing, and you have to figure out what's best for you. So for me, morning is my best and most productive time. If I'm going to do any of my writing, it's going to be in the morning time. You know, um, at night, once in a while, I feel really good at night, and I feel like I can get into things. But oftentimes, I mean, that's more rare than it happens. So I don't plan anything like deep work in the evening.
Yep.
It's usually just things, shallow work that I need to get done, and talking to people and all of that, because I understand how my rhythm works. Because once I get to about 10 o'clock, I pretty much shut my mind off at 10.
Yeah. No,
You know,
100%. And I think when you know what those important things are, knowing when you do them best. I mean, I've always said I think exercise is best in the morning. There's a lot
yeah.
of, research that shows that.
Hmm.
But at the same time, if that's not when you do it and when it
Right.
works for you,
Right.
then I'd rather you worked out later,
Yeah.
at night than didn't at all, right?
Yeah, for sure.
I spend 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock every day making cold calls
Yeah.
because that's when I do it best.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's when I found I'm energized, motivated, and ready
Hmm.
to talk on the phone.
Right.
But really understanding like when can we do that deep work? Is it
Hmm.
early? But trying to chunk it into one, like you said, 3 hour blocks. Like I'm going to use
Yeah.
this block to work on my business plan. I'm going to use this block to do something else. That helps you keep the busy work out of it.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
what you don't want to do, and what a lot of people do, is they try to multitask shallow work into the busy work.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like, hey, I'm working out. While I'm doing that, I'm going to do this and this,
Yeah.
and it gets very complicated to focus.
Yeah. I mean, there's certain things, like for me, I've never been able to work out and listen to like an audiobook or a podcast.
Yeah.
Right. That just doesn't work for me. It has to be music or no music. Right.
Hmm.
But driving, very easy audiobook podcast. I mean, and I think most people are like that as well. And
Yeah.
not that you can't be like that working out, but to me, like I like to put focus into my workout.
Yeah.
Like if I was just on a treadmill, okay, it doesn't take that much thought to walk or run.
Right.
But like working out and doing things, whether you're lifting weights or you're doing, I think that takes a little more concentration. It should take a little more concentration. Like doing martial arts, right? Like if
Right.
we're sparring and we're listening to a podcast, I don't think that's probably the best use of my time. One is going to suffer,
Yeah.
right?
I'm totally putting a podcast on next time we spar in class.
Put
Just
our
to,
podcast on.
yeah, just to confuse people. They'll be like, "What
Yeah,
is this?"
right.
Um, but no, so I mean, I think that's important. And don't make sure there's room. Like it doesn't mean shallow work's not important, right? I mean,
Yeah,
we
right.
need to respond to emails. We need to
Yeah,
make the graph, right?
yeah,
We need to, make the macaroni and cheese, right?
right.
The things that we have to do.
Yeah,
But at the same time, don't not do the deep work, because you're so swept up in the shallow work.
right. Yeah, and I think like doing things for your kids, making them lunch, doing the nice things for your kids, that is super important. That's not deep work,
Right.
and I'm kind of blurring the lines
Yeah,
of personal and business, but really it does. I mean, that often happens.
for sure.
But putting time into your kids, and you think it's taken away from something else, it's not. You're making an investment in them. They're going to feel loved, they're going to feel appreciated, they're going to feel important, because they are, and you're going to develop a productive human being. I mean, that's really what your goal is.
You know,
So
100%. And when I talk to clients about this, because this, like you said, this line blurs a little bit. I always like to use the example of like, microwaving the chicken nuggets. You can
Right.
totally do other things while you're I mean, as long as you don't burn the
Yep.
food, right?
Yep.
You can multitask the process.
Yep.
But when it comes time to sit down and eat together,
Yeah.
that's when we're not emailing, we're not
Right.
working. That's when
Yep.
it's time to
Right.
really, understand what the deep work is.
Yeah.
Making chicken nuggets,
Yep.
not usually deep work, but if you're
No.
teaching your kids to make chicken nuggets, deep work.
Right. Absolutely. All right. I
Love
think
chicken
we can
nuggets.
review. Yeah. Chicken nuggets. So this is called the productivity myth. And what did we do? Why being busy isn't the same as being productive. So that's kind of like
Yes.
the last. So that's the title of this. So the first step is knowing the 80/20 rule, which is 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. Now obviously it might not be exactly 80/20, but the whole idea is oftentimes there's only a handful of things that are super important that are going to really move the needle with your career, with your work, with what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Number two is utilizing the time matrix. So like I said, if you've seen it with Franklin Covey or Stephen Covey, if you've seen it anywhere else, look up that time matrix, but really spending most of your time in that second quadrant of things that are important, but not urgent. What's interesting is I think you'll find that the 20% of things that are important are usually what get done in this zone,
Right.
right? In
Yep.
this quad two.
Yep. Yep. And then step three is understanding deep work versus shallow work, and understand that both have their place. However, you need to make sure you're scheduling your deep work for a time that you feel most productive, and obviously you have to identify what that deep work is. What's important, what's going to move the needle. That kind of goes back to the step one of the 80/20. So what's that 20%, that deep work that's going to move the needle for your day? And then we don't confuse just the shallow work, or put, like you said, I like what you said, because I think that often happens, is people are doing deep work, but they're also doing shallow work in between. So they're really not doing either very well.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that is now you can safely go pare down your to-do list of the things that are important, the things that are going to move the needle for you, manage your time better, get it working for you, instead of you being a slave to your to-do list, which is terrible. That wraps up this episode of the Achieve Results Now podcast. Share this with anybody who's frazzled, people who are crazy, people who are into their to-do list and can't get out of it. And we will see you on the next episode.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening. Hop over to our website at www.achieveresultsnow.com to get your free copy of our book, Ignite Results, 4 specific daily actions to help you achieve results now. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Achieve Results Now. Thanks for listening, commenting, and subscribing. Now get out there and achieve results now.